Hello YouTube, it is Mr. Maclunkey back again with another video. I know it's been a while and I apologize for that. I think a lot of the recent channel direction has been so focused on the future, seeing what's next for SWGoH, and I think we haven't stopped a while to ask ourselves, what's going on in the current state of the game? So let's do a little bit of mindful grounding and move into today's article. So Meathead had posted this about a day ago on the official SWGoH info hub. What order do you guys unlock Galactic Legends? So he said he was having a discussion with someone. I assume Egnards, but I always assume Egnards. Um, Gotta just check my personal bias there. But he was asking, what is the optimal order for unlocking Galactic Legends for someone who just started playing? Um, and I think that's a tricky question because it got me thinking. Like, I feel like pretty much everybody who is into the game, and by that I mean people who are in Discords, on the Reddit, watching YouTubers playing this game, you tend to be a lot more informed than the average person. Um, Whether that's all information or misinformation, that's up to be seen. I mean, obviously, if you're subscribed to my channel, you've seen your fair share of misinformation. Um, but there is a general zeitgeist around the game. Like we have this idea and understanding. And if you look through the comments, most people are talking about some variation of the Holy Trinity of Jabba, Leia, and JML, because those three Galactic Legends, between the three of them, have a fair bit of overlap in terms of requirements. Also, a fair bit of overlap between two of the three meta ships, the Executor and the Profundity. So I think in general, we all have this kind of sort of idea of, yes, we want to complete this Holy Trinity, this Skywalker triangle, the father, or I guess not the father, the brother, the sister, and the slug. And how that kind of opens up a lot of opportunities in the roster, sets you up for some other additional farms, lets you kind of work smarter, not harder, sort of thing. And there's also a few people that are saying, well, yeah, like there's a few easy GLs to unlock comparatively. They have lower requirements in terms of relic levels. And that's Rey and Kylo, the first GLs. And I think that might be the direction that someone who's newer to the game might take if they're not as deeply embedded in this kind of SWGoH extended universe. Like if you're getting all of your information from the Galaxy of Heroes newsletter or in-game tooltips, you might think, oh, these are the two that I'm supposed to go for first. These are the two that released first. These are the two that have the permanent new player Lightspeed bundles in the shop. Um, and it got me thinking, like there is this kind of divide between people who have external SWGoH news sources and internal SWGoH news sources. And I think this is a good topic for discussion because not only do I think this question in and of itself has kind of a few answers that spark an interesting debate, but I think it also sparks sort of a meta debate about information and how it's presented in the game. And so it got me thinking. I know I was like one of the OG Minecraft players back in the beginning, joined right around the time it went from alpha to beta. And when you first log into the game back in those days, no tutorials, no tooltips, any of that stuff. Your best friend was the wiki. And if someone of that kind of similar generation hops in and says, "Okay, here's this new game. How do I go about playing this? Let me go and look up the wiki." This wiki is terribly outdated, and no offense to the people who maintain this. But Master Qui-Gon is the most recent unit available in here, and the entire kind of oh, all right, well, case in point, I was going to say this entire sort of ecosystem is in varying states of updatedness, um and it becomes difficult. Like even then, the raid section, as you can see, it's non-existent. Units here, like there's some useful information here. Like if I wanted to go in here, I could view some of these things. Have these things been updated? Every once in a while, they do shift some stuff around. I, off the top of my head, can't confirm or deny. We're also seeing a few pictures that aren't updating in here. Like not necessarily the best source of information. Typically, we would, once we discover it, go here to SWGoH.gg for much more updated information here. And it's difficult because, I mean, if you know about SWGoH.gg, all kinds of wonderful information. Like I can go in and look at like GAC counters and go and see like, oh, how do I counter Ray? Oh, okay. Well, what if Ray has I don't know, for example, Barris on her team? Yeah, now I can get more refined counters. Okay, well, we've got Barris and maybe we've got Kenobi is on this team. All right, cool. Now I know like these are the teams that work. These are kind of the estimated win percentages, how many, what the sample size is, average banners, like all of this great information for GAC, all of these information about tunes. Like even if I go back to here and I was like, well, what if I had my IG droid? How many Zetas does he have? 0. 3 Omega abilities. Okay, well, what about mods? What mods should I equip? Okay, cool. So here's like a few different examples of some optional mod sets. In terms of gear, what do I need to get him leveled up? All of this kind of wonderful information here that is obviously much more up to date than the wiki. But if you don't hear about this third-party site, you don't know about it. I know as well, thinking about even the SWGoH Reddit, never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy here, but just kind of scrolling through, there's all kinds of questions about things, and people are generally the varying Reddit levels of kind or cruel in here. And you can just kind of get some general information and interact with the community in a general sense here. I even think going into the Discord, like there are all kinds of Discords, different SWGoH YouTuber communities, guild Discords. The SWGoH events server is like a fantastic source. There's a lot of data mine information. And I think those are these wonderful community resources that are here. And in game, we've got the newsletter. And as of right now, like all that's on here is Starkiller Luke. Not really a whole lot of info there. And then as well, there's just other general information. Like I can go into the characters and whatnot, or I can go into the journey guide and see. And it got me thinking, like we have tiers, and they did recently just update these tiers to include some of these different characters to give people an idea of where to go. And I think it's particularly helpful because a lot of the newer characters have been slotting into tier 4. Every once in a while, they'll go back and give us a character from a lower tier. Like even like Jedi Knight Cal Kestis wasn't a top tier unit. He's tier 2 as of this chart. And we have this kind of basic communication provided in game. And I know it's a pretty common complaint that there's a lack of communication through official in-game sources. Because even this, like seeing this forum post, I only saw this forum post because there is a section in Slice of Otagunga, Egnard's Discord here, that provides updates. It pings the forum posts in this chat. And if it weren't for that, I don't know how often I would check this. And that had me thinking, these are all of these wonderful sources of information that the engaged player base has access to. SWGoH is a mobile game. It is a free-to-play with premium microtransaction options mobile game. The barrier to entry is incredibly low. As they said in that Diablo, I don't know, was it like a convention, TED Talk, something? Do you not have phones? Most people do. Like the barrier to entry for this, to download the app and jump in, incredibly low. Like anyone can be playing this. And people who are in the kind of general gaming scene, they know about Discord. Like that's the way that they communicate. And if they've ever played an MMO, that's probably where their guild is located, is on a Discord server somewhere. And they know about the existence of these tools. And once you find one of them, like if I'm a part of my guild's Discord, I'm going to see, oh, that's where the forums are. Oh, someone posted a link to a Reddit post. Cool. I mean, even if I register for the guild, they might ask me, what's my SWGoH.gg? Oh, if I don't have one, let me register for one real quick. Like one of these sort of sources can kind of link back to all of the other ones and give you more of that information. Whereas the general person who is hopping on SWGoH on their phone and just playing through, they don't necessarily have access to all of that information. And it got me thinking too about that debate. People say, oh, CG needs to communicate more. We need to release more information in the official channels. And I agree. Like, we need a little bit better communication. And I'm wondering if this might be a step towards it. So I know the new player experience revamp that they did, I feel like it was about a year ago at this point, kind of drastically shook things up, provided a little bit more information, guidance, some enhanced rewards, even the missions. Like the new player quests that give rewards. Awesome. On one hand, those rewards really help a player who's getting started out. Secondly, they give you an idea of where to go. They help to shape the journey. You're not just out here looking at like the massive list of characters in this game saying, oh, oops, sorry, not those guys. These guys, like, oh, who do I start with? Who do I farm? I have no idea. Instead, you're kind of going and looking and saying, okay, like, this is the idea. Like, these are the characters I need to farm to get the quest done. So maybe I start with them and then I branch out. And by the time you kind of have those early character quests done, you have roughly an idea of how to play the game and kind of where to go from there. So I do think that was a huge step in the right direction. I do think refactoring the tiers of the journey guide helped a lot. And I'm wondering, got me thinking, what about refactoring the tiers here for Galactic Legends, if that's the step that he's kind of taking or hinting towards? And I thought that's something we can kind of jump into a little bit later here in the video, but I thought that would probably be a good idea. But like philosophically, I was getting to the thought of like, well, what should in-game communication be versus what should these kind of other sources be? And it brought me back to kind of the early days of gaming. And I know one of my first gaming consoles was the N64. And I mean, I've always been a huge Star Wars fan. And one of those early games was Rogue Squadron, the original one back on the N64. And I was thinking, what sort of things pop up in the instruction manual? So like the instruction booklet that ships with the game. Like, this is in the box. Open it up. Really small table of contents, just some brief information. And you get some basics of like physically, how do you use a controller? If this is your first game you've ever purchased, how do you do that? How do you plug it into the console? What do the buttons do? Etc. And there's like all of this information. There's basic information. What are the different game modes? How do you play them? What do they involve? Like just kind of scrolling through this, enemy types, vehicles, the different planets that are involved, absolute basic characters and stuff that's like included in this. And then we get to the idea of, well, what about this? This is the official Nintendo Power Players Guide. And looking through this, obviously there's a lot deeper information involved. How to strategize and kind of get past certain things, what secrets are on a level, what ships work best, that kind of stuff. And it got me thinking, CG's official communication should be the instruction booklet. And a lot of this other information that we're already handling as a community, that should be the strategy guide. So I think CG should do a better job of communicating to players in game the basics. Like, these are some of the things that are going on. This is the absolute basic sort of thing. So I thought back to the idea of, well, yeah, like the community has filled that strategy guide role for quite a while. I think most famously, the one that comes to mind is Arnold's farming guide. He went through and just flow charted the entirety of this kind of thing. This is the most recent one that I was able to find, the 2025 guide. And I think it does a pretty good job of kind of highlighting this. And a lot of these tools came from kind of a pre-era system sort of mindset. So I know in general, farming is kind of split between those two paths right now. And I think that can be especially confusing for newer players. And I think there is some time to kind of get acclimated. They don't need to immediately go hard on farming the new stuff. But I think that's the direction the game wants us to be going, and to kind of catch up on some of this other stuff in the background. But looking at this he has this kind of classic sort of idea of getting the Troopers team and the Phoenix team. Those are your two main teams. You kind of progress through the campaign missions. Light side with Phoenix, dark side with Troopers. They have access to qualify for some of the different assault battles. They can qualify for some of the different journey guide characters. Some of them are GL requirements. A lot of cool stuff that's happening there. And I think one of the things they did that was really great is they emphasized those two being great teams in the new player experience update. They made it easier to do some of this optimal stuff without needing to reference this sort of guide. So I think that was fantastic. And I think we kind of need more things like that. And obviously, this is his idea of kind of an optimized guide. And I think realistically, there are multiple pathways, multiple ways to kind of get to where you want to be. And I always think of like my buddy Sin, and they really love the First Order. Is it optimal to go ham on the First Order straight up? No. Is that a problem? Also no. Like, enjoy what you enjoy. I always think too of this sort of idea, Captain Amazing, kind of an older SWGoH tuber who's not necessarily making content anymore. But I always think of his Maslow hierarchy of needs sort of idea. And he had this thing of like, well, first, what do you want to do? Secure your guild income, do stuff for the raid, make sure that you have teams to participate in whatever territory war or territory battle that your guild is doing. Just make sure that you're able to get stuff. Next, crystal income. So you want to have your pro-social stuff at the bottom, then move into your individual needs, getting crystals. From there, what do? Get your GLs and your fleets together, work on completing all of your assault battles. There's a tremendous amount of rewards in those assault battles, especially for early game accounts. And then going in, what do? You pick a direction. Like once you have the basic foundation built, go wherever you want. If you want to be an account that maximizes GAC, TB, Conquest, whatever, pick one. Do you have a faction that's your favorite? Yeah, go for it. Once you're kind of in that sort of spot, you can start working towards passion projects, being able to figure out, well, what is important to you in this game and making progress towards it. And kind of keeping some of these sort of things in mind, these are like the strategy guide things. Whereas the in-game direction might push you towards, hey, these are some of the basic things to do. This is where you figure out, okay, what are like the nitty-gritty details. And this is my thoughts on what a tiered system could look like for the Galactic Legends section. So I was thinking, like, the community, the strategy guide approach to this would probably put Luke, Leia, and Jabba on tier 1, saying these are the guys that you need to get first. Whereas what this is, this in-game guide, I think, is the instruction booklet. And I think the instruction booklet answer for tier 1 is Slicker and Ray. And a lot of this is release order. And I think in general, like by the law of power creep, I think the tiers was always going to be release order. Whereas the journey guide has room to go back and insert characters in earlier tiers and release units that are geared more towards a certain type of the game. The GLs, I think, by their very nature, were always going to be this kind of top of the top sort of thing. And I think they were always going to be subject to this power creep sort of idea. And I think that's the way that CG needs to go from the instruction booklet side of things. And I think the community has the option to go in on the other side and say, no, maybe it is worth it if you want to be extra competitive to skip tier 1 and jump straight into the tier 2 tunes. But this is my thought for tier 1. These Kylo and Rey have the early player lightspeed bundles. They're already kind of set up as, hey, this is your entry point. If you want to spend a little extra, you can get these guys super quick. The other thing is, aside from the ships, their requirements are super easy. They have the lowest relic requirements of any of the GLs. Their requirements can be used as a starter team for them, which I think is also a bit of a plus. And they are useful pretty much throughout the game for different reasons. So I always think Slicker, he's more offensive. Ray, more defensive. Slicker, very kind of specific and precise. Like, you get your first order team with him, and there are a few upgrades you can pick up along the way, but for the most part, he's rolling deep with the homies. Ray, like anyone who's light side and doesn't have a specific clause saying they can't work with Ray, can pretty much work with Ray. So I think there's this kind of fun like dichotomy that they have going on. And I think that works really well for that first tier for like early game players saying kind of go towards these. Because I think one of the other things that I didn't quite get a chance to touch on is another fantastic community resource, the Trello for Proving Grounds. All kinds of counters kind of set up here. And one of the things that's cool about Kylo, Slicker, has a lot of mentions on this list. If you get Slicker early in the game, he can help you breeze through a lot of these Proving Grounds battles. And Ray, obviously fantastic in GAC for defense, has a lot of pros there. Neither of them are like the best of the best for GLs, but you're at the early game, you don't necessarily expect that. So tier 2 here is where I think a lot of people would start to kind of see more of what's going on here. So these are the mid-game sort of picks. And I think also there's a fun thing that happens in this tier. So there is the previously mentioned Brother, Sister, and Holy Slug that kind of helps gear you up for Leviathan, or not Leviathan, the other two. C helps gear you up for Leviathan, which is why I think he gets to be included as like the devil to this Holy Trinity. He farms you Sith, Sith gets you ships. I think tier 2 in this mid-game sort of tier is a great place for the instruction booklet to put these for. Just saying, hey, these guys help get you ready for your meta fleets. These guys have harder requirements, but more overlap. And it's once we get into tier 3, which is obviously where I started to run out of budget for drawing. But I think this is late game players. So I think this is where you get some of these Lord Vader and Kenobi sort of people, especially once we tier out of the raid. Because obviously Lord Vader himself isn't allowed in the raid, but a lot of his new support team is. And I think we're going to see it become a little bit less of a priority to maximize that team as early as we have been recently. So I think that's a good spot for these two. I also think it's a good spot for Glat and Hondo. And I think this is where things get a little bit harder on the requirements. There's still some overlap between tier 2 and tier 3, but maybe not quite as much. And these are where we're starting to see some heftier requirements. We're starting to see some more impactful journey guide units required. We're starting to see some higher relic levels required. And I was kind of debating here too, because for the sake of this picture, I obviously drew Mando in tier 3. I do think Mando could potentially jump to tier 4. I just don't like to have it in game right here. Like, Mando is kind of on his own lone block and like everyone else is down there. I don't like the singleton stuff on there. Just aesthetically, it bugs me. So I drew them together, but I do think there's an argument to be made. Like, as of right now, with the R10 requirements for Mando, we could say, yeah, he's the pinnacle of tier 3. He's the highest you can get in tier 3. But I think once we get Thrawn, heir to the Empire as our next GL, I think there's much more of an argument to bump Mando and Thrawn down into this hypothetical tier 4 and kind of continue on from there. So I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts of one place that this could lead functionally in game is kind of having these tiers to separate GLs. And this is kind of my thoughts of what the logical sense would be. And I mean, like, obviously, potentially down the road, let me zoom out a little, taking Glando and putting him like down here, and then making this kind of additional tier below it for him and for Thrawn. And we can do a quick little stick figure Thrawn for you if you want. Artist rendition. go. And his little yellow shoulder pads. Yeah, we could get kind of this sort of setup going on. For him. And I think we could, yeah, obviously tier 4 there. And make kind of a tier for end game players where it's like the new of the new. And I do think having Relic 10 and above requirements is a solid cutoff for that there. Is this not the same blue? Ignore my unprofessionalism as always. There we go. And I think this makes sense from their perspective on that side of things. And I think it also makes sense from our perspective in terms of clarifying. Like, yes, CG is kind of presenting us with this information, these tools. Now we need to figure out what we want to do with it. And obviously, those of us who have been playing for a while, we know what to do. Those of us who are actively engaged with various parts of the extended community, we know what to do. The people who are new to the game, the people who are not as well connected and kind of deep dived into things, they don't have this information. They don't have the ability to kind of like dive in and get these things done in that same way that we do. So I'm thinking these sort of tools are good for the game. I know Egnard's always says we should think about not just where we're at, but where everybody is at. And I think that's something that we can kind of learn from here. I do kind of like this organization. As it stands, I think it kind of helps to differentiate and set up kind of where things are. Did I not give him a background? Sorry about that, guys. There we go. I think probably the blue one is better. There we go. Yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts here about that communication problem. So sound off in the comments if you agree with my sort of comparison of instruction booklet versus strategy guide. What other changes would you like to see to have a more comprehensive instruction booklet in place from CG? And what sort of things do you feel like should be left up to us in the community to fill in as part of that strategy guide? Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.
Maclunkey.